Oh my goodness, y'all. Welcome. This is Trish with Hip Homeschool Moms. I am here with Mary Jo Tate, and she is the author of Flourish and has a website, Flourish at Home. And Leanne from Hip Homeschool Moms. Hey, y'all.
Hello.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
We're glad to have you. Mary Jo's our southern neighbor. She's down south. She's in Mississippi. Leanne and I
Way down
both are in
south of
Tennessee.
Mississippi.
That's right. That's right. So we are here for Homeschool Teacher Appreciation Day, and Mary Jo brings a very, very, very unique perspective that I absolutely we hear more and more and more about, and so I'm thrilled to have Mary Jo on this interview with us. So thank you for being here, Mary Jo. I know she's I joke with her all the time and tell her how funny she is and how she needs to go off script, and that she just needs to let her personality shine. So I've already threatened her that I'm going to go off script today, y'all. So if she stumbles a little bit or stutters a little bit, it's my fault. Y'all don't look at her. Y'all look at me. So
Yeah, you didn't give me much choice with that last-minute warning, but that's okay.
I promise I won't. I'm
I
just
can
picking on you.
improvise, and I'll just answer whatever you throw my way, and we'll just make the
Mary
best of what we
Jo,
got.
you have such a great personality. Are you kidding? I'm just thrilled that your personality comes through when we hang out
Oh,
and
you're
talk.
sweet.
So tell me about your homeschool. Tell me, you bring the single mom perspective, and I don't think that's something that is more common today. And a lot of moms are very intimidated at the thought of doing that. And you've done it. You've graduated one already. And so tell us about your homeschool. Tell us about your style. Tell us how you did this.
Well, just about to wrap up our 18th year of homeschooling. I
Wow.
have 4 boys, and 2 of them have graduated. We've been homeschooling since the oldest one was kindergarten age. Forrest is now 23 years old. He is working full-time and also taking classes for his junior year of college. Andrew is 20, and he is working part-time. He has his own pet sitting and house sitting business, and he is about to wrap up his second year in community college. And he's going to take a year off to work before transferring to a university to finish his degree. Then Perry is 18, and his high school graduation is a week from tomorrow. I can hardly believe it.
Wow.
And then Thomas is, and Perry has a business of doing yard work, house sitting, pet sitting, house
Wow.
cleaning, pretty much anything. He's sort of the go-to guy. And Thomas is 14. That's my baby. I can hardly believe it. He's exactly as tall as I am now. The time
Mm,
flies.
mm,
And he's about to finish 8th grade.
wow.
And our homeschooling style in the early years, I was very much hands-on, side by side for all that kindergarten work. Do everything in the book, just like it said. Follow the schedule. I'm a rule follower, and
That's so
you know.
me. I'm like that. I gotta finish the book. I gotta finish the book. I gotta finish the
Yes,
book.
yes, yes. And God has loosened me up considerably. I was a very girly little girl, don't touch the blade of grass, you might soil your frilly frock kind of thing, was the mantra of my upbringing. And God saw
And
fit to
God
give
gave
me
you four
4
boys.
boys.
Yes.
And when their dad left, they were 9 years old, 6 years old, 4 and a half, and the youngest was only 6 months old. And so all of a sudden, all of my plans and my control freakness and all of that had to go out the window because I was
Mm.
dealing not only with the emotional trauma of their dad leaving and the embarrassment of being divorced and just the craziness of life with 4 kids under age 10, including a nursing infant. And
Mm.
so I had to make a lot of adjustments to what we were doing. I've always been a very eclectic homeschooler. Over the years, I've shifted toward the Charlotte Mason Living Books approach. As you can see from the background here in my office, a very small. Well, this is
She
a
doesn't
decluttered.
like books. Mary Jo, you don't like books at
No, no,
all. It's
no, no, not at all.
pretty
This is the
obvious.
decluttered version of the background. But this is my home office, and has about 12 of the 50 bookcases in our house. But so I like to homeschool using living books, lots of books. I love to spend a lot of time reading aloud, working one-on-one with my kids. But as a single mom, I had to make a lot of adjustments.
Yeah.
So for a couple of years, to be perfectly honest, we didn't get a whole lot done. The oldest 2 who were reading independently had independent work, and I was just focusing on surviving and making the transition to supporting the family, building my business, and so on. And you know what? God blessed those years too, just as much as He blessed the years when I was following everything exactly according to plan.
But you know
Over.
what, Mary Jo? A
Mhm.
lot of moms need to hear that
Yeah.
because a lot of moms, they're struggling. They're going through something. They've got,
Mhm.
I can't tell you, you're in our community, we've got
Yes.
moms
It's a
in
lot of
there.
pain.
There's cancer, there's family members that are, dying or have just recently died.
Mhm.
They've got infidelity in their marriage, their husbands left
Mhm.
them, whatever. You know the pain that's going on
Right.
in our
Right.
community. And they need to hear this. You
Yeah.
are speaking life into their homeschools. So,
Well,
yes, please share about some
yeah.
of this.
I still look back. I was very encouraged years ago, back when I was still listening to audio cassette tapes. This tells you how long ago it was, before
Uh-huh.
iPods and iTunes were even a twinkle in someone's eye. I heard a talk by Valerie Bent, who has written some resources on using unit studies for homeschool. And she was talking about the year that she was pregnant with her, I think it was her sixth child. She was desperately sick, and all she could do for that school year was lie on the sofa and read aloud to her kids.
Hmm.
And she lived in a state with mandatory yearly testing, and so she was very nervous about how that was going to turn out. And it turns out that that year, when she thought she was compromising and just barely getting by while she was desperately sick with morning sickness, her kids actually scored better, if I recall correctly. So,
Wow.
God blesses our efforts. There's more than one good way, more than one right way to homeschool, and we just have to do the best we can. One of my favorite quotes is from Teddy Roosevelt, and he said, "Do what you can with what you have, where you are." And that applies to so many things, not just for single moms who are homeschooling, but to anyone who's homeschooling, to any parenting, to anybody who's breathing, basically. We
That's
have to
right.
do what we can with what we have, where we are, and we have to be diligent. We have to do the best that we can. But if we spend all our time beating ourselves up over what we can't do, we're never going to get anything done. And
That's
we're going to
right.
create a miserable atmosphere for everybody else in our home.
That's right. That's right. That's amazing. So your husband left when your youngest was 6 months old. That's
Right.
that's that's.
Yeah.
So how did
Incomprehensible is a good word that
it
comes to
is?
mind.
I know. I'm just sitting
Yeah.
here. I'm flabbergasted. How did you do it, Mary Jo? How did you get through it emotionally with four boys? Number one. I mean, you're
Hmm.
the dad and the mom. Is dad still involved at all?
A little bit. He sees the boys on about every other weekend, and they
Okay.
have a good ongoing relationship with him, and I'm thankful for that because even when a marriage falls apart, both parents are still the kids' parents.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes there's extra challenges and difficulties, but they still need their dad, and
Yeah.
so I'm glad he's still a part of their life. As far as how I dealt with it, I was very, very blessed. I had very good friends. I had a team of about four other moms who were very close to me. I could call them whenever I needed to. They would just let me pour it out. In the early years, the early months, I needed to tell all the stories and just pour out my feelings and all the challenges and so on. And they just supported me and encouraged me. Unlike many single homeschooling moms, I was very blessed in that nobody challenged me. Our preacher's wife was the
Wow.
only one. She didn't challenge me. She just said something like, "Wouldn't it be easier for you if you put the
Yeah.
kids in school?" And she was saying that out of love, not out of doubt.
Malice. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the rest of my friends were very much, we know you want to keep homeschooling. Let's see how we can help you do this. And so I had emotional support. I had some financial support from the church and from my parents. And that helped me during that transition because one of the biggest challenges, there's the getting over all the emotional upheaval and helping the kids through their emotional upheaval, but there's also the very practical day-to-day challenges of how we're going to buy groceries, you
That's
know.
right.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I had to
And
build up my
curriculum.
business. Yeah, how am I going to buy curriculum?
Right.
And that is one of so to process those two things, the practical challenges at the same time as the emotional challenges, and while you're still postpartum and nursing,
I can't
is
even
hard.
imagine. I
It's
can't
hard.
even imagine.
Well,
You're you are
God is faithful, and as I said, I was very blessed. There were a lot of homeschool moms, single moms who do not have that kind of support, In fact, not only do they not have support, they have obstacles in people who challenge them and discourage them and say, you can't do this, grow up and get a job. Uh,
Yeah.
it's just very sad to me. So one of the things I know that some of the folks who are watching our hangout are single moms, and I want to do everything I can to encourage them. But I also want to encourage the others who are listening. Number one, we're going to cover some other topics too,
Mhm.
but I
Mhm.
can almost guarantee that you know somebody who's a single mom or a single dad. Maybe they're not homeschooling, maybe they would like to, or maybe there are friends who are going through struggles, and you can make a huge difference. You can be the hands and feet of God to them. You
Mhm.
can be a shoulder for them to cry on. You can be a voice of wisdom, of counsel. You can do practical things to help them, and you can make all the difference to whether or not they can continue homeschooling.
That's amazing. So you mentioned your business, and I'm actually fascinated to hear all the entrepreneurial spirit that's running through all those kids. So
Yeah,
this was a legacy that you have passed down, and that was something that God used through these trials and these tribulations. And you
yeah,
having to do that, it became part of their identity too. So I want you to talk about that because obviously entrepreneurship is a big part of whether you intended it to be part of your curriculum or not, it was.
right. Well, it's interesting how that rubs off, and it's interesting how we rise to the occasion. I had several jobs, several pretty mundane secretarial jobs, actually, in the early years of my marriage while my then husband was going through graduate school.
How
And
good of
then
you.
I went through graduate school, and then we started having children. And knew I always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. Even when I was in grad school, I was an editing assistant rather than a teaching assistant because I knew that if and when we had kids someday, I was not going to want to leave home to teach. I hadn't even heard about homeschooling. The irony is I did end up teaching. I just dove in
Wow.
for it. But so those were skills that I was able to call on. I wasn't one of those kids who had a lemonade stand. I was the one
Really?
who had the summer job at the card shop at the mall, that kind of thing. And so over the years, though, after I started having children, uh, the professor that I had worked for in grad school started sending editing projects my way to do when I could. He even sent a book contract my way. My first book was
Oh,
actually
wow.
called F. Scott Fitzgerald A to Z. It was a reference book about the
Oh,
author of The Great Gatsby, and they asked him to do it. He said he didn't want to, passed the contract along to me. That's when the second and third child were born, by the way, and for a long time I speculated that there was a connection between book contract deadlines and fertility because it certainly worked for me. There you go. There's some
oh,
unscripted real life right
there
there.
you go. There you
Yeah.
go.
So over the years, I did little things because there weren't any jobs that I could do in our little three stoplight small town where we lived. We were having the young children, and I didn't want to leave home, but I wanted to do something to contribute to the family's income. So I would do this freelance editing in a small way from time to time when it was convenient. So when your dad left, I knew I had to support myself. So one of the first calls I made was to that mentor from grad school, and I said, I need work. And he helped me really get started. Now, it's interesting. It goes back even before that. When people ask me how I started my business, I tell them it goes back to my fourth grade piano teacher. When
Oh.
right after I was married, when my husband was a seminary student, uh, the secretary to the director of the Doctor of Ministry program had been my fourth grade piano teacher. And she knew that I was, quote, good at English. And so while I was working full time as a secretary, I moonlighted editing DMin dissertations, mostly by people for whom English was a second or even a third language.
Oh, wow.
And I think I made $25 for each dissertation that I edited. That was a long time ago. I can't even
Oh,
imagine
my
that.
Lord.
I
And
can't
those are
imagine that now.
awful dry.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Well, this was, the late '80s, so that was quite a while ago. And I also edited the seminary's quarterly magazine. Well, I proofread it. And so when I went to grad school, that little bit of experience gave me the edge to be the assistant to this professor. And then that experience working for this professor was the groundwork that God laid for me to do that little bit of freelancing in those early years. And so then when I was on my own and I had to grow a real business, I already had that whole foundation laid in ways you couldn't plan that trajectory towards starting
Mm-mm.
your own business, not if you
You could
tried.
not. Mm-mm.
But
Mm-mm.
God had it planned. And so that grew, and it took a while over the first few years with the young children and all the transition, and we moved to a town about an hour away a year after the divorce was finalized to be closer to our church, and that was a good thing, but all this upheaval. But gradually I was adding clients and getting referrals by word of mouth. If you have a home business, one of the best things you can do is get testimonials and referrals from clients who are already satisfied with your work. That's one of the ways I've gotten most of my business over the course of 30 years now.
Mary
And
Jo, will you give
yes,
us a testimonial after the? No, I'm just kidding.
sure. You bet.
You said it, so I had to ask it,
It
right?
depends on how you treat me for the rest of this hangout.
Okay, okay. Oh gosh, darn! And I was the one that said I was going to go off script. Okay, I'm going back on
Yeah,
script.
I just turned it right back on you, didn't I?
I've got it. I've got it. Okay, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Anyway, so God graciously grew my business, brought clients my way. There were times when business was slow. I attended a lot of entrepreneurial conferences so I could learn more about how to run a business. I knew how to edit. I knew how to fix sentences. I knew how to put commas in the right place and find typos, whether I was looking for them or not. But I didn't know anything about how to run a business. So I went to various entrepreneurial conferences to learn things about freelancing and how to set prices and how to market. And I used to take my kids with me to those, and I would take them one at a time, starting with my oldest one. And he quickly developed a reputation when he was about 12 years old for meeting every speaker at every event we attended. There was one event where the tickets were, I think, $2,000 for the weekend, but providentially, we had that as a bonus from something else we had gone to, so it cost us about $400 for both of us to go together. Again, God's provision. And
Yeah.
he would run up on stage in this group of 500 or so high end internet marketing people and meet the speakers before or after they spoke.
Wow.
And so he just thrived in that environment. This is Forrest, the one who's 23 and working full time now,
Right.
and he's a business major, as it turns out.
Surprise, surprise,
Yeah,
right?
and each of them have gone with me in turn to one or more conferences, and it's just been amazing to see how they have flourished in that environment. Some of them are naturally more outgoing than others. One of the things I have found is that what we teach our kids, we have to be careful because sometimes they turn it around on us. My second son, Andrew, he's sitting right next to me over here. He's my tech guy, so he's here in case something goes haywire with my technology, but he is an introvert. Forrest, my oldest one, never meets a stranger. Andrew is more introverted. He's the quiet tech guy. They both have their own wonderful attributes. But I took Andrew with me to a conference in Phoenix, Arizona when he was about 10 years old. And this is when he was just barely at the stage of knowing how to shake hands and look someone in the eye when he met them. And we were there for a 3-day weekend. He went to a chess workshop with a former state trooper who now teaches life skills through chess. And he really loved this, and he ended up trying to help raise money for this guy's foundation. And so he spoke in front of a group of 200 people using a handheld mic. This is my son, the 10-year-old
Wow,
introvert.
the introvert. Look at that.
10 years old introvert spoke with a handheld mic in front of 200 people and tied for first place in a T-shirt selling contest to raise money for this guy's foundation. So because he had learned about getting out of his comfort zone. That was one of the big messages, and that was one of the big lessons that I had learned as an entrepreneur, was to continually get out of my comfort zone. So when the conference was over, we rented a car and drove up to the Grand Canyon. Now, this was one of the things I had always wanted to do. It was on my big dream list that I carry with me in my purse everywhere I go, and I talk a lot about that big dream list in the book, but the Grand Canyon was one of my big dreams. So Andrew and I drove up to the Grand Canyon, and we went to one of the sunrise things where you can go out and meet a guide on one of the beautiful overlooks and see the sun rising over the Grand Canyon, which is just glorious. Now, I am deathly afraid of heights. So for me to go to the Grand Canyon at all was out of my comfort zone. So we get to this spot where we're all meeting for the sunrise, and the guide is sitting on the edge of the Grand Canyon, dangling her feet down into the certain drop to death.
Oh,
And
I'd have
Andrew's,
been.
yeah, Andrew's a few yards back from her. He's now an Eagle Scout, by the way, so this was, no sweat. Oh, let me see. I want to get close. And I'm standing even farther back than that. And so I'm trying not to hover, and not to
Hyperventilate.
hold him back too far, not to hyperventilate. And Andrew turns around and says, Mom, if I could get out of my comfort zone enough to speak in front of 200 people, I think you could move a little closer to the edge of the Grand Canyon. Couldn't you?
Oh my goodness,
Like
Andrew.
I said, be careful what you teach your children. There was nothing else I could do. I had to move closer. Now, I didn't go dangle my legs off the end. I'm not that crazy.
I
But
wouldn't
I
have
moved a
either.
little closer, and the view was better. So that has always been for me just this iconic moment, both in my business and in my parenting, of learning that
And
sometimes we have to push ourselves a little
homeschooling.
farther. What?
And homeschooling.
Yes,
And
yes.
homeschooling because
Well,
he turned it around.
I don't make a whole lot of distinction between parenting and
That's
homeschooling, but
right.
yes,
Yep.
I think they're all part of the same thing. But he turned it around, and so he has done a great job of finding clients for he pet sits, he house sits. As I mentioned, one of the boys does yard work and house cleaning, and they're just doing various different things. And that has been so good for them. They often make more than they would make flipping hamburgers,
Oh, I'm
and
sure.
they're able to set their own schedule. And of course, homeschooling gives them the flexibility to work on their own schedule. Perry today was supposed to be helping our friend's dad paint a water tank or something like that, and it was raining, so he called somebody else he had turned down for an indoor job, and the guy still needed him, so he's out today, even though he has an anatomy and physiology test tomorrow.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
he's trying
Very
to raise
good.
money for college, and he wasn't going to
Mhm.
pass up that opportunity.
Well, you know what that reminds me of? It actually reminds me of your book because
Mhm.
one of the things you talk about so much is finding, there's the ideal, the
Mhm.
perfection, that thing
Mhm.
that that you had to give up when your husband walked out the door, and in reality. And
Right.
really that's what your book is all about. So tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about your book. Tell us the name of your book, tell us where they can get it, etc.
Okay. The name of the book is Flourish: Balance for Homeschooling Moms.
Mhm.
And I've got to say right now, even though this is Homeschool Teacher Appreciation Day, about 90% of the book applies to any busy mom, especially moms who are stay-at-home moms or work-at-home moms.
Right.
And it's available through Apologia. It's on Amazon. It's on iTunes. And I also have it available through my own website at flourishathome.com. And there's a lot of cool bonuses that come with it, like customizable planning forms. But it just really grew out of my own experience of all the things that I was learning and practicing. I like to say that I've test driven a lot of mistakes so that you don't have to. And that there are
Thank you. We appreciate that, by the way.
there are plenty of stories that I tell on myself in the book of things that I have done that have really messed up and the lessons that I learned from them. But that quote that you mentioned, find peace in the space between the ideal and reality, is probably the single best summary of the book. Because just as I
Mhm.
was saying before, we do what we can with what we have where we are. The ideal is that perfect goal, how we would like to educate our kids, how we would like to parent, what we'd like our home to look like, whatever we could do and be and have if we didn't have any obstacles. And the reality is real life. You know what that is. It's what happens
Mhm.
every day that keeps you from doing what you would like to do, or sometimes helps you to do what you would like to do. And so the real challenge is, what do we do in the middle? If we spend our time being paralyzed by what we can't do and worrying about it and whining about it, we're not going to get anything done. But if we focus on
Mhm.
what we can do, it shifts our perspective, it shifts our attitude, and it helps us. Now, a lot of people think compromise is an ugly word.
Mm.
They don't say, "Oh, I don't want to compromise." I believe in what I believe in. But
Right.
I'm not talking about compromising your beliefs. I'm not talking about compromising your principles. What I'm talking about is compromising on how they play out in your daily life. For example, I love to read aloud to my kids, especially when they were younger, but it's also great when they're older. And if I had my ideal homeschooling situation, especially when the boys were younger, we would all be sitting in the living room together, snuggled up on the sofa, except they're so big and tall now we wouldn't even all fit on the sofa. But two of them just tower over me. Time flies. But so I would
Yeah.
love to read aloud, say 2 hours at least every day, 5 days a week. That would be just my ideal, if my voice would even hold out that long. And the reality is that doesn't work in our life, and it especially didn't work when they were younger and I was finding balance as a single mom and building my business. But that doesn't mean that I had to give up completely on reading or using living books. It meant I had to find another way to get that same result. Some of the ways we did this were I would have an older child read aloud to a younger child. That was good for both of them, and that saved
Mm-hmm.
some of my time. Sometimes I would have a younger child read aloud to an older child to practice reading once he was, working on fluency. Um, Audiobooks can be very helpful. We've listened to audiobooks in the car or while folding laundry or just different ways like that. Um, I would prefer to be the one reading aloud, but that audiobook can get the same benefits for the kids of reading aloud. So there are a lot of different ways to achieve the same goals and meet those same priorities, um, even if you can't meet your ideal.
A new normal. A new,
Yes,
you're
a new
dealing with
normal. Hmm.
a new normal. That's
Right.
that's great. Well, you've mentioned a couple of ideas already, but one thing that I know, I have your book, and I love your book. But one of
I'm
the things
glad.
that we hear so much about, and I think it's something that we need to talk about,
Mhm.
is the comparison word. We're always,
Oh.
and you are so genuine and so sincere about helping us walk through that. Give us
Mhm.
some words of wisdom here, because I think that that's something that all of our moms need to hear, to
Mhm.
stop comparing.
Right.
And so,
I think that comparison is one of the deadliest enemies that homeschool moms have. Um, we tend to think that someone else is super mom and we're screwing up everything that we're doing. One of the
amen.
reasons that I tell so many of my mistakes in the book and when I'm speaking is because I want to dispel any possible illusion that I am super mom. I don't wear a
Yeah.
cape, and let's not even think about trying to find a leotard that would fit.
You're
So,
so fun. I'm
so
telling you what.
But it's easy. I was speaking at a conference recently where one of the people who was planning on coming had written to the coordinator of the conference and said, I need to come, but I don't even really want to come because I just know everybody who's speaking is going to have her act all together, and they're just going to make me feel like there's no way I can possibly live up to their standards, and I'm just going to go home feeling more depressed. Well, God in His providence always gives me new illustrations, and that was the conference where the lights went out in the bathroom while I was in the middle of changing clothes because I was sweating from head to toe because I'd been setting up my table, and also I'm 51 years old, and you know what happens when you're 51 years old. Was that enough reality for you? So,
Yes.
I made sure to share that from the stage. It was a mixed audience, so I left out some of the details,
Yeah.
but because after that, how could anybody possibly feel like they couldn't live up to my example? But it's so easy, whether things are going well for us or whether things are not going well for us. It's so easy to look at someone else and think she has her act together. We all know that one mom. Heaven help you if she lives next door. But even if it's just someone else in your
Amen.
co-op or your group or your homeschool support group, she's back in her size 6 sheath dress 3 hours after giving birth to her 8th child, while mowing the back 40, grinding wheat that she grew for herself, baking bread, and breastfeeding the toddler, and wearing a baby in her. And we look, we think there's no way I can do it, but she's not either. And if she pretends she is, she's probably lying. There are one or two people who are kind of like that, maybe, but let's just ignore them for right now. But and with the internet too, I love Facebook. Y'all know how much I'm on Facebook. I love it, but there are a lot of people who get intimidated by other people just presenting their best lives. Or don't even get me started on Pinterest, which can bring out more guilt and anxiety and comparison than almost any other single weapon. And so what happens is we look at all this and we think, I can never live up to that. I'm doing it wrong. I need to try something different. I've
Yeah.
talked to so many moms who are hurting because they think they're not doing it just right. I talked to one mom at a conference last year who came to me after I spoke and she was heartbroken because she thought she was so disorganized. She said, oh, I'm just so ADD, and my best friend, she's so scheduled, and she has everything just working out, and her children are learning Latin and this and that. And I let her pour it all out. And then I said, but God didn't give your children to your friend. He
That's
gave your
right.
children to you, and He didn't make you like your friend. She's very scheduled, very structured, very type A, and you're more flexible, and you have a different system. Are your children learning? Are they growing? Are they maturing? Well, yeah, they are. I said, that's fine. What you're doing is fine. You don't have to be like her. There is no one right way to do this. And I just put my arm around her and hugged her. And you could just see, as that message began to sink in, you could just see that burden rolling off her back. It was a burden she had placed there voluntarily by comparing herself to her friend. Sometimes
Mm.
it's a burden we place on ourselves by comparing ourselves to people we don't even know. I can do that as a speaker and writer. I can think, oh, so and so has a best-selling book, and I don't have a bestseller yet. Or that speaker, oh, he's so much more eloquent than I am. Or this person who speaks to my same audience, they've got a bazillion Facebook followers, and I've only got a couple hundred, so I'm not doing it right. Well, nobody's an overnight success. There's different ways to do all of these things, whether it's homeschooling or whether it's speaking or writing, and we have to operate in our gifts, in our own temperament, in our own circumstances, and honor God where He's put us. And we can't do that if we're too busy comparing ourselves with others. So I really think one of the main things that homeschool moms and dads need to hear is there is no one right way to homeschool. There are a lot of good ways. The right way for you to homeschool is the way that works for your family.
That's so wise. That is the truth, and that is something we try to emphasize every time we're in the environment, like in the community, where moms are struggling. We try to remind
Yes.
them of that. You know, right is defined differently, and actually, your right changed. My right
Yes,
has
yes,
changed.
yes.
So,
It's
what
May be
was
different
right
from year
for
to
you?
year or from child to child.
Right. So and I think that the more you're, you know, the number of years, the longer you're homeschooling, and the more you're experienced, and I don't mean experienced because, like you said, they're all different, but you
Hmm.
know, you start getting some wisdom under
Hmm.
your belt, and you start
Yes.
figuring out that, okay, I'm going to have to. It all ends up working out in the end, and I'm going to
Right.
have to be these are the majors. I who were we talking to earlier that said that these are the major things? I would think it was Kendra Fletcher. These are the majors, and these are the things that I can let slide for a
Hmm.
little while.
Right.
And I think one of the things you talk about a lot in your book is balance too, and
Hmm.
having to figure out how, you know, there's this right vision, and they
Hmm.
also think that everybody has it all balanced, that we all
Hmm.
have this, you know, oh, we're cooking the meals and our beds were changed, you know,
Hmm.
6.2 days after they were changed last week,
Uh,
and
Not in this
that, you
house.
know, so, I mean, you know, that our yards are mowed and that we have no weeds and that our flower beds look perfect and we've
Mhm.
got vegetables growing in the backyard. I mean, really, I mean, come on. So I think that that comparison thing can also lead into thinking balance is perfect. And you know, tell us about for you, your
Mhm.
balance has changed a 50,000 times.
Yeah,
How does
yeah.
it? Yeah, how do you manage that? How do you morph through that?
Well, I used to be very unbalanced in those early years of parenting, especially as a single mom. I was just juggling from one crisis to the next. I used to practice what I called the plan, neglect, rotation cycle. Um, See if you give it a name, it sounds official. Plan, neglect,
And
rotation
that is
cycle. Yeah,
fantastic. I
yeah,
love that
yeah.
one. I
And
think I
there,
practiced that too. How did you
no
teach?
actual children were neglected in the making of this example. But it was comparative. When I had an editing project, I would spend less time with the boys, less time cleaning the house, less time with the one-on-one homeschooling lessons, and focus on meeting that editing deadline so I could hurry up and get the check so we could buy some more groceries.
There you
And
go. That was pretty important.
yeah,
Groceries are important.
right. And but then there would be a gap before the next project would come in. So while I was waiting for the next editing job, and I didn't know anything about marketing yet, about finding more business, I would spend more time with the kids, catching up on lessons, trying to clean the house. That was before I delegated all the house cleaning to the boys when they got
Hmm.
older. And so, but I was struggling. I would tell them, okay, guys, it's just I know that I'm not spending enough time with you, but when we get just past this one more deadline, it'll be different. I promise. And I wasn't lying to them. I really believed what I was saying, but I was fooling myself because it
Yeah.
was not going to change until I changed. And we often talk about juggling all of our responsibilities, but when you juggle, eventually you're going to drop the ball.
Mhm.
So that's when I started thinking in terms of balance, and I still remember the day just this vision of a tightrope walker came into my mind. And if you can think of someone on a high wire, and unlike a juggler, they're making small, gradual motions. They're not just flailing around all over the place, but they're adjusting gradually to the different circumstances they encounter. And a few years ago, I watched Nick Walinda cross the Niagara Falls and then later the Grand Canyon on this cable about, I don't know, 2 inches wide, over the starting to drop to death that I was
Mhm.
afraid to even
Yeah.
look over. And
You
it
see,
was
I'm sitting here going,
amazing because he
Wow.
knew
Yeah.
exactly what he was doing. And then I saw an interview with him where he talked about using that balance pole as an extension of his arms to help him respond to the changing conditions. So that if there was a gust of wind, he would use that pole and he would shift a little bit from one side to the other to stay balanced. Balance doesn't always mean standing straight up when you're on the high wire. And then if the cable would start to bounce, he would actually kneel down on the wire, which seems to me like it'd be even more dangerous, but he's been training his whole life for this. And so he would kneel and pause for that bounce in the cable to pass. And he was praying all the way across as well. If I was on a high wire, I would certainly be praying all the way across. You know, and I realized that was a wonderful metaphor for parenting and just for life in general. We have to make gradual adjustments to respond to changing conditions. Sometimes when everything's falling apart around us or there's bounce in the wire, we have to kneel and pause, and we certainly need to be praying all the way across. And so that became for me the vision of what I wanted to accomplish, not the drastic juggling act or the plan, neglect, rotation cycle, but just that smooth, steady progress in response to the changing conditions. And so, and I have just totally lost track of where I was going with
No,
that.
that is we were
Oh,
actually talking about
balance.
the balance
Yeah, the
and
idea of
how
balance.
I love that. That is
Yeah.
a fantastic analogy.
Yeah. And what's funny is it has become popular to disparage the idea of balance. I can't tell you how many articles I've come across online or even heard speakers say, oh, balance is a myth. There's no such thing. And I understand, I think, what their reasoning is, but I think it's coming from a false idea of balance because to hear some of these people talk, it's like they're looking at life as a pie chart. And they think that balance means every wedge in that pie has to be exactly the same size.
Mhm.
Well, that's not how I look at balance. I think true balance is not that you give an equal amount of time and attention to every aspect of your life, but that you give an appropriate amount of time and attention to every aspect of your life. When Nick Walinda was crossing that high wire over the Grand Canyon, he did not just go bam, bam, bam across the same all the way with the same how straight he was
Tempo,
standing and the
yeah.
same speed. He adjusted in order to keep his balance. Or if you
Yeah.
think about the balance scales, like what the Lady Justice holds, the scales of justice, and you've got the
Mhm.
balance pan with like this with sides. If you were weighing feathers in one pan and rocks in the other pan, you could not achieve balance by having an equal number of feathers and rocks. You would have to
No,
have
you
an
ever.
appropriate number of feathers and rocks. And then if somebody suddenly dropped an orange down in the middle of the pile of feathers, you'd have to adjust the number of rocks to restore balance. So it's about looking at what each aspect of our life needs, not about having exactly the same number of hours with your kids that you do on your job or whatever.
And you brought up something a few minutes ago, and you said about having your children pitch in,
Yes.
and I think that's really important for moms, especially single moms. I
Hmm.
don't know how you did it. I mean, Mary Jo, I think you're amazing. I just tell you that
Well, you're
now.
sweet. It's God's grace is
Um,
how I did it.
yeah, it would have to be because I don't know how you did it. I mean, that's amazing. But I know part of it that that probably has helped your children be so independent and so entrepreneurial and so capable was that you did have to lean on them. You
Yeah.
had to lean on them to pitch in more than some other families might. And so talk
Mhm.
about that. Talk about what you've seen the fruit of that on the other side, because a lot of us don't want to have to do that.
Right. Well, it's a lot more trouble to teach your kids how to do stuff than it is to do it yourself.
Oh no, that's the
But
truth.
it's a lot more trouble to keep doing it yourself over the long haul than it is to take the time to teach the kids how to do it. Right now, please, if you have young kids, don't let this discourage you. It's just a vision into the future, okay?
That's
But
right.
right now, as I said, my boys are 14, 18, 20, and 23. The 23-year-old is even back home living here part-time because of his job being here and his classes being somewhere else. So he's even here part of the time, but between class and a full-time job, he doesn't have a lot of time. So I'm mostly
Right.
talking about the younger three now.
Mhm.
They run the entire household. They do all of the housework, all of the yard work. They take care of our dog and our three cats. They do some of the cooking, some of the grocery shopping. If I happen to do the grocery shopping myself, I pull up in the driveway, honk the horn, and sashay into the house carrying only my purse while they unload and put away the groceries, and likely as not, cook the groceries.
I
Then
love this vision. Keep
yeah,
going, keep going.
sashaying into the house with the purse, yes. Every
I
now
love
and then,
it.
if I'm feeling exceptionally generous, I'll carry in the bag that has the loaf of bread in it. Uh, but
Oh, the
this
luxury
is,
of having boys too. Wow.
yes,
Yeah, you keep going.
I expect to have very grateful daughters-in-law someday.
You will. I can assure you, you
Yeah.
will.
But this
They're gonna
didn't
love their
happen
mama.
overnight, and I've lowered my standards, somewhat. But in some ways, my boys do better work than I do in keeping the house clean and so on. They take care of things. Now, this doesn't mean it happens perfectly. I still have to remind them to take out the trash sometimes, or negotiate with who's cooking dinner tonight. But it has been a real blessing to me, and it's also one of the ways they've been able to function. When Forrest moved out to his apartment, when he started going to Ole Miss, he was able to function. He knew how to buy groceries, he knew how to cook meals, he
He
knew
knew
how
how
to
to
pay
wash
bills.
clothes. He knew how to wash clothes. I
Yep,
mean,
he knows how to
and
wash clothes. Yep, I left that out. They do all of their own laundry and the towels, and the only laundry that I do is my personal clothing.
mm,
And but it took time. I did not learn how to do laundry until like the week before I moved out to go to college.
wow.
Um,
Yeah.
I did not learn how to. I have wonderful, wonderful parents, but mom was very much a perfectionist and wanted to do everything herself. And so I felt like I could have helped a lot more than I did if she had allowed me to do that. But it takes time to train them. When you're teaching your kids how to wash the dishes, for example, you have to start by washing the dishes while they watch, and you explain it to them. Then you have them wash the dishes while you give them step-by-step instructions. And then you stand there and supervise while they wash the dishes, and maybe they ask questions or you give a reminder here and there. And then when you see that they've mastered it, you don't even have to supervise anymore. And the
Wow.
same process can apply whether you're teaching them how to wash the dishes, how to sort laundry and wash it and put it away, how to cook something. And kids can do things younger than we think they can. With my oldest child, when I was the most uptight mom you can imagine with just one child. Again, God has a great sense of humor giving me four boys. But the oldest child, I didn't expect him to do anything, and then it's over the years I've learned how to make them more responsible. But I'll never forget walking in the kitchen one day and finding my 4-year-old messing with the microwave. Now, I would never have let Forrest, the oldest, mess with a microwave at age 5 because he might get injured or electrocuted or
Whatever. Yeah.
yeah,
Burn
something.
himself.
And
Mm.
and so I said, Thomas, what are you doing? He said, cooking a waffle. I'm like, what do you mean you're cooking a waffle? Perry got tired of cooking waffles for me, so he taught me how to use the microwave. So the 9-year-old had taught the 5-year-old how to nuke his own waffles so that he wouldn't have to do it for him. Now, I still can't figure out why they were using the microwave instead of the toaster, but
I know. They were softer. They're
let,
softer
let
when they come
this
out of
be
the microwave.
noted. These were frozen waffles from a box, not from batter that I made myself from wheat that I ground myself, although I have done the grind the wheat and bake the bread thing in the past. So,
Keeping it real. Let's keep
yeah,
it
keep
real.
it
That's
real.
right.
No.
That's right.
So kids
We,
can live up to our expectations for them, but we have to train them. We can't just throw them in the water and let them sink or swim. We do have to give them some training and instruction, but it really, really pays off.
I agree. I agree. I was very fortunate. Before I started homeschooling, my kids actually went to a school. They went to a
Mhm,
Montessori school, and in that Montessori school, that concept of they called it practical life,
mhm,
but there were lessons in practical life, and all those lessons are lessons that we kept going when we started homeschooling. It was like, they were washing dishes and washing their. My kids wash their own clothes. They wash my clothes. They
mhm.
do. They cook. I mean, I know. I get it. And I have all boys too. So
Oh
yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
kindred
Yep.
spirit. I salute you.
That's right. That's right. So we're just, an hour apart. We need to get together
Right?
more often.
Yeah, we really
So,
do.
well, I do have one final question. I know we're over our time, but I want to ask one final question. How can we, the moms that aren't, that we have intact families, and this is not a put down, it's actually the exact opposite. How can we help moms out there that are single moms? What can we do that might help them, either not necessarily even homeschool, but just in
Mhm.
general?
There are so many things you can do. And I like to use the abbreviation EMT. Doesn't stand for emergency medical technician, although it's
Are
important
you
in
sure?
getting to an emergency state. But it stands for encouragement, material help, and time.
Yeah.
And you can encourage single moms. And this we're going to talk mostly in the context of helping single moms here, but it also applies to friends who are going through any kind of a life crisis, whether it's cancer in the family or a death in the family or whatever. But
Or
so people,
military
yes,
families
or
where the
military families, very much when the dad's deployed. So
hmm
we're talking in the context of single moms here, but think beyond that and other ways you can help anyone who's in need. So encouragement. Single moms especially tend to be overwhelmed because of time, because of money, because of shame, because of not feeling good enough. They often feel like they're a second-class family. In the homeschooling world in particular, there's a wonderful emphasis on the role of the father, and that's good and true. But it can be a burden to the mom who's single, often through no real fault of her own, to keep hearing nothing but, oh, the dad, the dad, the dad. It's like, well, the dad's not here, and so we're less than. So they need encouragement. They need your prayer. They may need wise counsel from you. They may just need to, like I said, need you to be a shoulder to lean on while they pour out their heart. Praying for them
hmm
and letting them know that you pray for them. Our church has been particularly good about that, and once one of the deacons in our church sent a note to my boys telling them that he had observed how helpful they were to me and praising them directly. And
Oh,
man, that was an encouragement to them and to me both. And then the
wow.
second thing is material help. Now, this could mean money, especially in the early years while I was getting my business established. Sometimes I would find an envelope of cash in the mailbox or gift cards, or sometimes people would leave something in the church office so that it could be given to us anonymously. People gave us clothes when their kids outgrew them. If there's curriculum you're finished with, you can share it with another family. Uh, the first year we lived in this home, I pinned a note on a bulletin board at the church saying, does anybody know where I can buy some firewood? And within 30 minutes, 3 different men in the church had offered to bring me firewood as a gift. And
Oh.
for 9 or 10 years now, the deacons in our church have supplied us with firewood, often taking my boys with them to chainsaw the tree that's already fallen down. Just practical things like that. You may not have money. You may not have material goods you can pass along. Time is really one of the most precious gifts that you can give to hurting families, especially to single moms. Um, can, One year when we first moved to our current town, a friend of mine included my boys in her co-op. They were doing a study of the states, and one day a week they went over to her house for several hours. Now most co-ops are a cooperative enterprise, but in this case I just dropped my boys off and she taught
hmm
them that day, which gave me some time to rest or to plan or to work and just to be off duty for a little while. That was a huge, huge, amazing gift. Maybe you can't do that, but maybe you can give another mom's kids a ride to piano practice or to a co-op field trip. Maybe a lot of times single moms' kids can't participate in field trips or things because mom's busy and can't take them, or maybe they don't have transportation. You can sit with them at church. You can practice hospitality. Invite them to your homes. Often single moms feel excluded because everybody's getting together as married couples. And so look for ways to include them, not just with mom gatherings, but with whole family gatherings, especially at holiday times, especially when it's new, those first couple of years. It's very raw, very difficult because holidays are when you're used to getting together with family. Maybe just the absence of dad is painful enough, but it can be even more complicated. Let's say it's Christmas and it's dad's turn to have the kids, so mom's at home alone.
Yeah.
So not only does she not have her husband, she doesn't have her kids, and it's Christmas. And that's can be so. Be aware of that. Same thing would apply to widows, even older widows. Do they have a family to be with on Thanksgiving or Christmas? And just look for practical ways. And don't wait for them to ask. I encourage single moms to ask for help, but most of them are not going to do that either because they're ashamed or shy or because too many people have essentially slapped them down for asking for help. So you have to take the initiative and say, not just how can I help you, but would Friday night be a good time for me to drop off a couple of pizzas, and what movie would you like me to rent for you? Or come on over to our house for lunch and we'll just hang out in the backyard while the kids play, or whatever it is. But just be creative, and it's not so much exactly what you do that matters as the fact that you do something and you show love that way.
Mary Jo, will you write an article for our site around that topic, please?
Yeah, you bet.
I'll
be glad to.
We need that. But that really spoke to my heart. I think that's something that we don't think about. And it's not out of malice. It's just not in the forefront of our vision.
Oh, and it wasn't on my radar at all. I wasn't even aware of single moms or knew any who homeschooled, and now I see that one of the things that we learn through going through trials is to be more sensitive to other people's challenges and trials. And so now I see I'm more likely to notice people who are hurting in one way or another, to reach out to the single parent and to try to help other people in the same way that I've been helped. But once you start looking, once you start thinking, who can I help? Who looks lonely? Did they have enough groceries in the cabinet to feed those kids over the weekend? So being sensitive.
Wow, I'm serious. We would love for you to write an article at Hip Homeschool Moms about that, because that's a valuable. That's really some wise suggestions there. So I have so enjoyed hanging out with you. See, I didn't go too bad off the script.
You weren't too scary. Yeah, you weren't too scary.
I told you, you have such wisdom and have so much to share. And sometimes I feel like I don't always get the time to talk to you about it. And I'm so thankful. Thank you for allowing me to go off script a little bit. I appreciate that.
A little bit.
A little.
It's been great, and I love what y'all are doing and appreciate any opportunity to work with the Hip Homeschool Moms. So thank you for having me.
Well, we appreciate it. Okay, guys, it is Homeschool Teacher Appreciation Day, of course, and Apologia has a lot coming up in the next couple of hours. Mardell is having giveaways all day. If you haven't been going over to visit their Facebook page, you need to. And don't forget to join Apologia for their webinars tonight, and that's going to be Davis and Todd Wilson, the family guy. Isn't it the family guy? The family man. Family man, yeah. So, anyway, y'all, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Mary Jo, I love talking to you.
Thanks.
And
appreciate talking to you as well.
Sorry I kept you so quiet over there. She had her mic, you saw that, she had her mic muted, right? Y'all know. It's because, she says it's because her computer is wacky, but I really think it's just, I think she's done something. I don't know what she's done to that computer. I need to inspect it. I'm going to send it off to a computer guy, but anyway. I do enjoy hanging out with y'all. I think it's fun. So we're going to do it again. Maybe through Mentoring Moms, we'll do this again. So
sounds like
y'all
fun.
have a great afternoon, and moms, have a great day. Talk to you later.